Well, hello and welcome to Bethel Online. Big shout out to our San Jose and our Santa Clara campuses. We love you guys and so glad you've tuned in today, and for all of you who are guests. Depending on when you've tuned in, we're either just getting ready for our drive-in church, which is live on each of our campuses, or we're just wrapping it up. Either way, we're glad that you are here today. I want to give a quick reminder about our time of prayer and fasting that's going to begin on October 25th, and we're going to end it on October 30th. You'll be hearing more about that, and there'll be a prayer sheet as well to follow along. I hope many people will be a part of that. Well, we just got back from Oregon and saw our brand new granddaughter, little Miss Kinsley, and she is adorable. And we were so thrilled, so excited for our son and our daughter-in-law. It was just a wonderful week, and it's great to be back. Some of you might remember a book that was written in 1975 called Dress for Success. And it sold millions of copies. And the whole premise of the book is essentially you can achieve what you want by looking the part. I mean, you could just look the part. If you can look successful, if you can look powerful, in other words, if you can just look great, you can be great. And according to the author, John Malloy, success is really all about image. And he made the following statement in his book. He says, "Let research tell you what success looks like. There's a dress code and you violate it at your own risk." And I thought to myself over the years about that book, I was just a kid when that book came out, but I thought if there was an award for like the most shallow book in the world, I mean, I think Malloy's book would be in the running, yet it sold 5 or 6 million copies. Why? Why so popular? Well, I think because all of us have within us a sense or a need to feel significant, a need to know that our life counts, that our life matters, that there is this inherent need to know that our life has meaning, and that we're not just taking up space and we're not just sucking somebody else's oxygen. I don't think that feeling is in us by accident. I don't think that inherent need is an accident. There are lots of people that look to fill that need in a lot of ways, sometimes very unhealthy ways. Sometimes they try to fill it through success, other times through achievement or wealth or power or fame. And by the way, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of those things. It all has to do with if we have them in their proper place, because they make really lousy masters, but they make really good servants. In 2007, Parade magazine did an article on Elvis Presley. In 2007, it was the 30th anniversary of his death. Presley had sold 250 million records. He starred in 33 films. He claimed 1 billion with a B fans. And 30 years after his death in 2007, he was still the highest paid entertainer in the world because of all of the residuals and all of the legacy sales. Parade magazine made the following statement about Elvis, and this is what they said in that article. In spite of his enormous success, Elvis was, according to his friends, an unfulfilled and an unhappy man. Suffering from obesity and drug dependency, he died at the age of 42. Now, what was most striking about the article was the quote by Presley's wife, Priscilla. And it was in an interview, and she said the following about her late husband. Elvis never came to terms with who or what he was meant to be or what his purpose in life was. He thought he was here for a reason, and he was right. Maybe to preach or to save or to serve and care for people. That agonizing desire was always in him, and he knew it wasn't being fulfilled, or he wasn't fulfilling it. So he would go on stage and he wouldn't have to think about it. Elvis hadn't a clue, her words, hadn't a clue about where to begin to look, that is, to look for his purpose in life. In a sense, he was lost. 2,000 years ago, Jesus defined or redefined what greatness looks like to God. It still shocks our culture today. It often shocks Christians today. You can find it in the gospel account of Mark in verse 10. Jesus is sharing with his disciples again, hey, this is where I'm heading. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to lay down my life. I'm going to the cross. I'm going to suffer. I'm going to die for humanity. Two brothers, James and John, kind of turn, and in so many words they say, well, by the way, when you come into your kingdom, your rule, would you just mind having a seat for us, one on your left and one on your right? Well, in the ancient world, everybody knew what those seats were. They were the seats of power. They were the seats for great people. They were the seats of honor. And Mark tells us in his gospel account that Jesus called his disciples together, round them up, let's have a talk. And this is what he said in verse 42 through 45. Jesus called them together and said, you know those who are regarded as rulers over the Gentiles, lord it over them. They exalt themselves above others. Okay? And their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Those are four really important words. Not so with you. Instead, Jesus says, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man, a term he often used for himself as Messiah, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. This was a shocking, a radically countercultural statement in the first century, and it's equally shocking today. Because Jesus teaches the greatness isn't about what you have. It isn't about titles. It isn't about position. It isn't about possessions. It's all about how I serve. In other words, if you want to go up in God's economy, you got to go down. If you really want to gain in life, you have to learn how to give back. I mean, he taught this and modeled this all the time, right? Mark chapter 8. Anyone who would seek to save his life will lose it. In the end, he loses it all. Anyone who give his life away to me in the gospel gains life. We're in this series on living on purpose, and we're learning how to cooperate with God's Spirit and His strategy to fulfill His mission, both His mission in us, which is to become more like His Son, and His mission in the world, which is to help others become like His Son. This idea of making disciples everywhere, right? Neighborhoods and nations. Now, what makes this such a colossal challenge to do this mission, is what we talked about in the very first teaching in this series. We're in a war. If you're a follower of Jesus, you're in a spiritual war. It's a spiritual war. It's an unseen war. We have an unseen adversary that the Bible speaks very plainly about. Furthermore, we don't fight our battles the way the world fights. We don't even fight with the same weaponry. It looks completely different for the Christian when it comes to fighting. We learn to charge the darkness the same way the first church did in Acts chapter 2. What did they do? They lived on purpose. What does that mean? We're unpacking 5 building blocks. 5 building blocks that help us understand the behaviors of a disciple. This is what a disciple does, okay? I have them all starting with G. We call it a 5G life. We gather in meaningful, in healthy community or fellowship. In healthy, we don't gather together and become toxic, but healthy. We grow as disciples. We looked at that last week. We give back, this idea of living a life of service, a life of generosity. We go as witnesses because we're never off the clock. If I'm a Christian, I'm always a Christian. So it means I represent Jesus no matter where I go. And then finally, we glorify God always. We point it all back to Him. Well, these are the activities, the core activities. Lots of other activities can be nuanced out of those 5 Gs. But these are the core activities of a disciple. Today we look at giving back in service to others for Jesus' sake. In other words, we Today we'll look at how, or what are some of the ways in which we can live a generous life, because that's the title of today's teaching, a generous life. Jesus said, whoever wants to become great must be your servant. Your servant. If you want an interesting study in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, read all the times Jesus used the word must as an imperative, or in other words, as a directive. You must do this. You must not do that. Let me tell you, it's just a handful of times. All four Gospels, a handful of times where he uses the word must as a directive. Whoever wants to be my disciples, right? Mark 8, must deny himself. Take up his cross and follow me. You must be careful to do everything that I tell you. Jesus said elsewhere, you must be ready because ready for what? Because the Son of Man will come in an hour you don't expect, in his second coming. You must be ready. And here what we're looking at today, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. In other words, this isn't one among many options. If you want to be great, if you want to have a sense of significance and meaning and impact in your life, this is essential. In other words, significance isn't about my style. It's not about the way I dress. It's not about my titles. It's not about how much I have or how little I have, for that matter. It's about taking on the life of a servant. This is radically counterintuitive as well as countercultural. But here's the deal. Jesus says if you want to be great, this is the path to greatness. And here's the crazy thing. It's the crazy thing that happens when we decide to take on the life of a servant. It's unexpected. We don't expect it. We didn't see it coming. It doesn't make sense to us, but it happens nonetheless. Significance surprises us. It surprises us. A sense of purpose, this sense of meaning shows up in our lives. In other words, we discover it really is true, up really is down. That in order to gain really requires that I give back. It's the very thing that Jesus taught and modeled. Jesus said of himself, we read past these words quickly, read them slowly. I did not come to be served. The Son of Man did not come to be served. He is worthy to be served. He's the only one that's worthy to be served. He's worthy to be honored. He's worthy to be worshiped. He's worthy of all of that. But he said, that's not why I came. I didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. A sense of purpose and a sense of significance comes through a generous life. And it is a powerful, hear me, it is an effective way to fight our battles, to charge the darkness. It is so effective to charge the darkness in our world. I want to leave you today with just two big ideas, just two today, so you're getting off kind of easy. It's out of the most famous story of Jesus' life. More paintings have been made about this scene, the Last Supper, the Passover meal. John chapter 13. If you have your smart device or you have your Bible today, let's turn to John chapter 13. Read the whole chapter this week. But it's a beautiful picture of a generous life. Beautiful. Let's just look at the opening 5 verses. I'll give you a couple of big takeaways, okay? This whole generous life, verses 1 through 5. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. I love that. Verse 2. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. And then he says, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. He knew who he was and where he was going. That's the issue of identity. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. Verse 5, after that he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Here are two big ideas from the scene today. Number one, if we want to live a generous life and a life of significance, it's going to take humility. It's going to take humility, and there should be an outline today that you can go to, notes if you're on Bethel.org, a link to those notes if you're in Facebook or YouTube. It takes humility. I encourage you to post this today. It's a statement that's been shared for many years. I remember hearing it probably 20 years ago, but it doesn't make it any less true today. It's important for us to hear this. Humility isn't thinking less about myself, but thinking about myself less. It is a powerful statement when John writes in this scene in the upper room that Jesus, knowing who he was and where he came from, where he was going, he poured water into a basin and he began to wash the disciples' feet. Now, it was customary in Jesus' day, in the ancient world, if somebody washed your feet when you came into their house. You walked mostly everywhere. It was dusty, it was dirty. In that culture, if you had a servant, any kind of servant in the house, those are the ones who did the washing. It was such a menial task that in Jewish households that had servants, they would relegate the job of foot washing to servants that were non-Jewish, to Gentiles. It was so degrading, and it was considered such a lowly task, which makes it all the more remarkable that Jesus, Emmanuel, we call him at Christmas time, Emmanuel, God with skin on, God with us, didn't hesitate to do what no one else did. We read of no other disciple making the move to wash feet. Foot washing was also viewed, by some anyways, as a token of hospitality. For example, if a person was willing, if they were willing to stoop down, if they were willing to pick up the towel in the basin of water and to wash another's dirty feet, it was considered a gesture of love. I love the story that Jeff Lucas tells in his excellent book, The Prodigal Friendly Church. And he tells the story about the founder of the Salvation Army, William Booth, or William and his wife, Catherine Booth. And it's a great story. It's a critical time in the life of the Booths. And William Booth is in desperate need of inspiration. He's got workers all over the country and in different parts of the world by this time in the Salvation Army, and he needs to rally the troops to serve in the world, but he doesn't know what to say. He's at a loss. Now remember, this is the 1800s. There's no internet, there's no social media, there are no phones. The way you communicate with people is through telegraph. It's the telegraph. But what to say? Plus, he knows, it's on his mind that every penny counts. They serve the poor around the world, the Salvation Army, and every letter costs money. What do I say in an economy of words to spark faith and encouragement in those who serve others? And finally, it came to him. To the thrill of the telegraph operator, because he's waiting. What do you want me to send? William Booth writes 6 letters. 6. O-T-H-E-R-S. Others. That's it. And the telegraph takes off. It was the challenge that shot around the world. It's a challenge that continues to challenge us today. Others. Great Apostle Paul, in describing the attitude of Jesus in Philippians 2, read the whole chapter, it's powerful. Just verses 3 and 4 here. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Don't make it all about you. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. No qualifiers. Value others above yourself. Can I just pause here? Jesus washed the feet of Judas who would betray him. Value others above yourself. Do not look out for your own interests or your own interests alone, but each of you to the interests of others. Here's the deal. Pride always leads to selfishness, and selfishness never produces what it promises. It never produces what it promises. William and Catherine Booth understood God's people, the church, exists for OTHERS, for others, not just for ourselves. It's for others. And that takes humility. No, I'm not saying don't care for our needs. That's not what I'm saying. It's not what the scriptures are saying. What I am saying, we can't only care about our needs, only have our focus on ourselves and live a generous life and experience the impact of significance in our life. Can't get there. Can't get there unless I put the needs of others ahead of me. Finally, number 2, it takes availability. So it takes humility, but it also takes availability. Washing feet in the ancient world is like taking trash out in the modern world. Everyone knows it has to be done, but sometimes it's hard to find somebody available to do it. It just is. Pastor Rick Warren made an insightful statement many years ago, and I've never forgotten it. He says, when it comes to the life of Jesus, don't only learn from the steps of Jesus, don't only study the steps of Jesus, but he actually said, study the stops of Jesus. The stops. Well, what did he mean? Well, if you read in the gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the New Testament there, one of the things you'll notice about the life of Jesus is that he used interruptions as ministry opportunities. He used interruptions as opportunities to give back and to serve. For example, Matthew chapter 20. Jesus is on his way to Jericho. Jesus was always purposeful in where he was going. All of a sudden, you've got 2 blind men that are on the side of the road, and they yell at the top of their lungs the following, and I read it in verses 30 through 32. Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. Have mercy on us. The crowd rebuked them, told them to be quiet. Hey, shut up, don't bother him. But they shouted all the louder, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. Verse 32, Jesus stopped. He stopped, and he called them, what do you want me to do for you? What a great question. Lord, they answered, we want our sight. They were both blind. Jesus had compassion on them, touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him. The mission is always about making disciples. Many of the miracles, not all, but many of the miracles that Jesus performed started with interruptions. Think with me, if you're familiar with some of his miracles, the blind beggar, the lame man who 4 friends dig a hole in a roof and lower him in, smack in front of Jesus mid-sentence as he's teaching a packed-out house, the woman who has internal bleeding or the issue of blood, the mother who has lost a child in the funeral processional. The very first miracle that we have recorded of Jesus is turning water into wine. They were all interruptions. They all started as an interruption. Sometimes God brings interruptions. Or rather, sometimes God brings opportunities that require us to adjust our thinking and our schedules. He brings opportunities our way that sometimes require us to adjust our thinking and adjust our schedules for the sake of serving others, so we can seize the now moment. You know, there are 2 opportunities right now I'm thinking of right here at Bethel Church. First of all is our trunk or treat outreach. It's going to be a drive-through edition versus driving in, a drive-through, but it's going to be a wonderful opportunity to shine the light of Jesus to our neighbors in safe and free ways. It will be fun. It will be engaging. October 31st, that Saturday, we're going to do it both at Santa Clara and San Jose campuses. We need lots of people to dress up their trunks. Now, they're not going to be handing out candy out of those trunks. We're going to be bagging candy, and I'll talk about that in a minute. dress up motorcycles, etc. Have your costumes, and it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful event. We probably need 50 people to help us stuff bags of candy. We have to stuff thousands of bags of candy. This coming Saturday, the 17th at 11 a.m., October 17th, you can come, be at the church, and help stuff that candy. We need lots of people to do that. We need lots of people to sign up, decorate their trunks. They want to have candy in there, but let's deck them out because it's going to be a drive-through, okay? And then at the end, kids are going to get candy, get lots of fun stuff, and so forth. I hope many of you will go on the website, just Bethel.org. You'll see it on our homepage there. You'll see Trunk or Treat. You can sign up to serve there. One other example of a now opportunity is building a media serve team. And very excited about this. You know, our world has changed. Church has changed. It's changed. Even when we're all back in the building, it will not look the same. And I'll talk more about that in the weeks and months to come. So we're learning how to adjust to the new normal so that we can carry out the mission of making disciples everywhere, neighborhoods and nations. One of the ways that we need to grow is in the area of our media serve teams. So if you have an interest or you have a skill for serving through social media, video production, graphic design, webcasting, photography, we would love to hear from you. Please sign up today. Again, let me drive you to our website, bethel.org/volunteer. Bethel.org/volunteer. And all you're doing is signing up for an informational meeting. Okay, so you're not signing up for the next 20 years to serve somewhere. It's just an informational meeting. But we'd love to see many of you go on the website and sign up for that. Here's the deal. There are two great enemies. There are more than two, but there are two for sure. Great enemies to availability. Remember, God's not going to get it done through you or me if we're not available. He'll get it done, but He won't get it done through you or me unless we understand humility and availability. Here are the enemies: a lack of margin and perfectionism. A lack of margin in our life and perfectionism. A lack of margin. I have no room in my life when the opportunity comes my way. Not every opportunity is for me. Not every opportunity is for you. But God does have opportunities for us. Now opportunities. Sometimes they come as a result of an interruption. But if I don't have any margin in my life, I have no capacity to respond to that opportunity, and I miss the serving assignment. The other one has to do with my circumstances. Well, I just don't feel like the circumstances are right. It's just not right. I need to wait for things to settle down before I take that step. I need to wait for things to get easier. I need to get on the other side of this. I need to see this be settled. I need COVID to be over. You're going to miss a lot of opportunities if you're waiting for that. These are two things, two great enemies of availability. The Passover meal in Jesus' day was a big deal. Jewish family, it was a big deal. Lots of preparation, lots of investment of time. Washing feet in the midst of a Passover meal would seem trivial at best and maybe at worst completely out of order in light of the sacred celebration that's been going on for centuries. Yet Jesus prioritizes washing feet. He makes a big deal out of the small thing, and He ends up using it, and this is what sometimes we miss. He uses it as an illustration for a much bigger truth about what He came to do and about what He requires His disciples. After washing feet, if you read down in John 13, read the whole chapter, it's profound. Read down, and this is what He says. The latter part of verse 12 through verse 17. He's washed their feet now. He says, "Do you understand what I have done for you?" Well, they didn't. Do you understand? He asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am." Verse 14, "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." Verse 15, "I have set you an example that you should do as I have done." Very truly, he drills down on this. "Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him." Verse 17, "Now that you know these things, you will be blessed." There it is. There's the win. You will be blessed if you do them. as I give away, I become blessed. He says the same essential thing again in verses 34 and 35. As you come down, he just says it in a different way. He re-emphasizes the same thing. A new command I give to you. Love one another as I have loved you. He's just been demonstrating that love. One very small, practical way, through washing feet. Love one another as I have loved you. People will know you are my disciples for how you love one another. You see, washing feet in this scene was symbolic of what Jesus would do for them and us a little bit later on the cross. That he would actually give his life as the payment for our sin, for our shortcomings, for our failures, for our shame, for our disappointments, all of that stuff. He would pay the price so people could be washed, cleansed from the very stuff that keeps us from a forgiven, free, and forever life. No servant is greater than his master. I'm giving my life, now you give me yours. You give me yours. Jesus says, if you give your life away for my sake and the sake of the gospel, right? Mark 8, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it to serve others. 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 A generous life that points back to Jesus will surprise us with a sense of significance, a sense of meaning and purpose, because we are shining his light and his love and his ways in dark and broken places. And man, it is a core value. This is a core value of a disciple. And it's a key way that we fight our battles and we charge the darkness. I'm going to invite you to engage in worship, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to close us in prayer. Hallelujah, Lord. Hallelujah, Lord. Lord, we thank you today. We believe in you. Our trust is in you. Our hope is in you and in your word and in your truth. And we thank you for that today. Because you gave us your life, we can now turn around and give our lives back to you in service to others for your sake, for your glory. We can do that today. And I pray for each and every one of us to not only look out for our own needs, but to look out for the needs of others. You have now opportunities for us, whether it's trunk or treat, whether it's a media ministry or something else. Sometimes every day there's an opportunity to touch a life in some way. And I would just say today, maybe you've been listening, and I'm so glad that you have, but maybe you've never put your trust in Jesus Christ. Or you say, Frank, I'd like a life like that. I mean, I'd like to sense significance. I would like to have a sense of purpose. It's counterintuitive. It's not the way we think. And I just invite you in this moment to invite Jesus in, because that's exactly what he asks of us. Why not just pray? Best that you know how. Just pray. Jesus, I come to you just as I am. Forgive me for living my life apart from you. We try it on our own. It just doesn't always work so well. Forgive me for that, Lord. Come into my life. Be the forgiver. Be the leader of my life. Help me to give my life away to you and to others for the sake of the good news. You know, he'll answer that prayer if you pray that prayer today and you mean it. And I hope that you will, and I hope that you'll let us know that you've done that today, because we want to help you on your spiritual journey. God has next steps for you right now if you prayed that prayer. And let us help you with those next steps. God bless you. I hope you'll invite somebody to tune in. I hope we'll be a part of Trunk or Treat and all that's coming up over the next few weeks. God bless you. Thanks for being with us today.